land use item you guys just overwhelmingly rejected. I mean, why do you feel that the vote went the way it did?
Whew. I don't think anyone has to tell you why it's a bad idea to drop a school in the middle of an industrial area, especially with heavy trucks, machinery, shooting ranges, that sort of thing. There's a place in the city to have schools. It's closer to parks. It's closer to residential areas. It's supported by transit, near pathway connections with sidewalks. And so just drop a school in the middle of an industrial area, especially one so close to the airport, near all of these heavy industrial uses. We're just begging for trouble, and I think council made the right decision ultimately to reject this approval. And I know that Councillor Dhaliwal is committed to working alongside the school to be find an alternative location. But just because it was quick and relatively cheap to put the school in that place doesn't mean that it made proper planning sense. So, of course, we need to push as hard as we can to catch up with Calgary's population growth, but we can't afford to cut corners in this way. We can balance having industrial uses in the city of Calgary limits, but to thrust the school into the middle of an industrial area was just going to be begging for trouble in the future for future pedestrian issues, not to mention sterilizing the potential industrial capacity in the nearby vicinity.
I don't know if you saw this, but right before we came down here, press release about memorandum of understanding
Yep.
signed between the city and Siksika Health Services.
Mhm.
I think is second such agreement with an Indigenous First Nation. Considering though that MOUs aren't legally binding, do you feel that this is still performative reconciliation, or is it reconciliation?
No, this memorandum of understanding is it's a critical next step. The City of Calgary has been working with Siksika Nation as well as our other Treaty 7 partners for practical, on-the-ground ways that we can advance reconciliation, but also improve the service delivery for Siksika residents, but also Calgarians as well. So this is the next logical step. It's practical. At this point, it is very high level. It speaks to the how of the interaction rather than necessarily the what. There's a lot of answers that we're going to be seeking in terms of provision of services, supporting great health outcomes for not just Siksika residents, but also Calgarians. So very strongly support more meaningful measures. We've gotten through largely the symbolic parts of White Goose Flying, the report that outlined the actions here locally that we can implement to advance the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We're now getting to the substantive collaborations, which specifically this MOU with Siksika Health Services represents. And I've had the opportunity to engage very closely with the elected leadership as well as their equivalent of civil service, and very much excited to see where this growing partnership brings us. It's just the latest in terms of our council and city administration's commitment to doing the right thing, but also seeking partnerships that lift all boats in the region.
I One more on that. Sorry, just to
Yep.
follow up. We've seen these agreements with Blackfoot and now Siksika Health Services.
Mhm.
Any chance we'll see similar agreements with either Tsutina, maybe Stony Dakota?
Certainly, you're going to see continued exploration and flushing out of these MOUs, but we can't stop at the MOUs. I think that we're further along than you'd think with, say, the Tsuut'ina Nation. I was just recently hosted by many chief and minor chiefs relatively recently at the nation. We're looking at the nuts and bolts of extending potentially Calgary Transit service to their new TAZA development. We're looking at ways that mutually we can approach development along that corridor to make sure that it's mutually complementive uses on both sides of, say, the city of Calgary limits as well as the nation. So again, these MOUs are really critical, but they're a reflection of the work that needs to be done so that we can offer great quality of life and greater affordability for Calgarians, but also the broader region. It also fits in terms of the regional table discussion. So as a council, we have a commitment to working more closely with Chestermere, with Rocky View, with Airdrie, with other outlying municipalities, and we're certainly ensuring that there's a space at the table for that when it comes to our First Nations partners as well. So again, this is really just about how we deliver the best quality services for residents in the overall region.
Thanks.
Mayor, yesterday we heard you bring up the Olympic bid for 2038,
Yep.
or a potential Olympic bid. Once again, this follows comments from the premier earlier this month about potentially, you know, bidding on the
Mm-hmm.
Olympics in the future. Where is all this coming from? Is there a group that's behind some of this, or is this just conversations right now? Where's
Yeah,
this coming
yeah. So the number one job of the mayor is to find investment and find money for Calgarians' priorities. And when I hear the Prime Minister talk about Canada's changing role on the world stage, taking a stronger leadership in terms of convening other nations, including better meeting our defense obligations. When I hear the federal government talking about that, when I hear the Premier talking about musing, say, for example, about potentially investing to the tune of billions of dollars for needed priorities like updating our oval, connecting our LRT to our airport. I'd be crazy to not at least be considering the prospect. So, to be crystal clear, the prospect of a future Olympic bid, I don't think it can be led at the political level. I think it needs to be the grassroots community support. In the failed bid in the 2018 plebiscite, what we saw was the bid was very much about the Olympics as the end. For me, I'm agnostic about whether to pursue an Olympic bid, but if it is the means by which we can get Calgary's fair share of investment from our provincial government, and if it's the means by which our province can get our fair share of investment from the federal government, I think we'd be crazy to not at least be thinking about it. But to be clear, it's the Prime Minister musing about this, it's the Premier musing about this. As the Mayor of Calgary, my number one job is to get money for our needed priorities. We know that we need to address McMahon. We know that we need to build out the Green Line. We know that we need more housing. And if this is the vehicle, if this is the means by which we get our fair share of investment, I'm pretty utilitarian that way. I'm not an Olympics at any cost person by any stretch of the imagination. I opposed the previous bid for a number of different reasons, primarily because nobody could show me the business case. But if Premier Smith can come to the table and show us the business case, I'm more than happy to hear her out.
I'd like to ask you on two topics. If I
Yeah.
could. First is a bit
Did you have follow, Adam, on this topic?
Yeah.
On
First,
Olympics?
what then tangibly would come of that? I know we keep talking
Yeah.
about like infrastructure, but what tangibly would
Yeah, I at this point, I'd say the ball is in the provincial government's court. If the Premier is musing about this, show us the money, show us the cash, and then let's have a conversation.
my question, first question, a bit broad in scope. This week, the provincial government announced we're going to stay on daylight savings time. They kind of overturned a well, kind of they overturned the referendum decision. Today, they're talking about electoral boundaries and they're ignoring their own report. To a casual observer, it looks like if they don't get the answer they like, they just do what they want. Have you seen that play out in the city of Calgary, and how is it affecting what might be happening here?
I think at the municipal level, we're leading on these questions. Unlike other orders of government, we respect the will of the voters. If we ask Calgarians to go to the ballot box like we did with the Olympic bid plebiscite, we honor those results. It's troubling to hear provincial or federal politicians musing about overriding the will of the voters in that fashion. I certainly believe that if we have a referenda, it should be. I certainly believe if we have a referendum, or regardless of the referenda questions, we should be honoring those results. And look, I get that this whole daylight time thing is a big talker, but I got elected to deal with substantive issues. I care about safety, about affordability, about infrastructure. This is a complete waste of time, regardless of where you stand on that. I would really challenge both our provincial and federal government to really be focused on the issues that matter to Calgarians. And look, I don't have a horse in this race. I don't really care about us changing the clocks back and forth. The more time that we spend talking about this, the less time we can talk about substantive issues. And as far as I'm concerned, as the mayor of Calgary, I got elected to deal with infrastructure, with public safety, with taxes. Let's deal with the substantive issues. And, if we have time on top of that, then let's debate whether we should change the clocks or not.
This may be not a, it may be a more substantive issue than just daylight saving time. It is about democracy, representative democracy. It's
Oh, so, you mean the connect?
yeah,
Okay,
so
I get where you're going.
how
So,
do you feel
yeah.
about the government ignoring its own commissions or the will of the people
Yeah.
and just making decisions in cabinet? How do you feel about that? And have we seen any effects on the city of Calgary in
Okay.
similar situations?
Okay, I get where you're going with that. So, in 2021, Albertans were asked to weigh in on the time change. Calgarians and Albertans ultimately rejected that change clearly, but obviously narrowly. I was on the losing side. I voted opposite to stop changing the clocks. I personally support not changing it anymore, but Albertans voted. Albertans had their say, and as somebody who was on the losing side, I was willing to support the will of Albertans on that. And I understand that this is the number one priority for our premier right now, somehow. But given it's the number one priority for our provincial government, uh, if they feel so strongly about it, I would suggest to take this to the voters. If you feel that the voters got it wrong 5 years ago, bring this back to them to vote on again. Otherwise, if this is just implemented by MLAs having asked the question and not gotten the answer that they wanted, that would be very troubling. But certainly, I would fully be expecting the premier and the provincial government to be taking this to another vote. And the fact that they've set October up for many referenda questions, I think, makes it relatively good timing. If they want to revisit this topic, they can add it onto the, I believe, 7 other questions that are already on the ballot without significant costs. So again, I'd be urging them to honor the decision of 2021. If they think that we got it wrong, the voters here in Alberta, take it to another vote.
The redrawing of electoral boundary ridings. I mean, they appear to be ignoring their own commission and making a decision in cabinet. And that could have a direct effect on Calgarians.
Yeah, so for me as mayor, I want to ensure that Calgary and our interests are well reflected. We've seen that Calgary is overtaxed compared to other jurisdictions. Even the $350 property tax hike from the provincial government, that's more than double what Edmonton and other major municipalities are facing. I certainly would not like to see any type of erosion in our representation. And it is troubling to me that the government did not just summarily accept the findings of the majority report. Look, we live in Alberta. We have obviously political debates and challenges, but we don't have the level of American style rhetoric and politics, at least not yet. We don't have the level of gerrymandering that we see down south. You have governments of many different stripes in the past for many, many decades simply accepting the nonpartisan findings. And I would say that it is concerning that instead of accepting the findings of that majority report, that instead they're moving to a more partisan approach. Central to me, though, is just representation for Calgary. I do not want to see our representation further diluted. It's clear that we do not have adequate representation. Otherwise, we wouldn't be being thrust upon with the largest property tax hike in Calgary's history. So I want more representation, and I want this done in an above-board way. And again, it is a good example of how municipalities are leading the pack in terms of accountability. At the municipal level, we have a completely separate arm's length citizen commission. Councillors aren't approved in setting their own pay or even gerrymandering their own ridings. And I think that that's the way that it needs to be.
Do you think this is gerrymandering?
I think it's ultimately, I think the fact that the nonpartisan panel and even the UCP appointed chair made their findings and their recommendations, and those recommendations were rejected, begs a lot of questions regardless of what the outcome of this new approach is. Part of the reason that we have these nonpartisan panels in the first place is not just to protect the public, but it's also to protect the politicians. At this point, there's enough question marks around the overall process that even if they do come up with something that is largely defensible, relatively impartial, the fact that this process was undertaken the way that it was begs questions about the overall process. So ultimately, it's not for me to determine whether it's gerrymandered or not. I can't speak to what the motivations of those MLAs involved are, but I would say that the way for the province to demonstrate that this is an impartial process, completely apolitical, would have been to simply just summarily accept the recommendations of the majority report.